everyone from the President of the United States released a statement about 2 days ago. Attorney General has spoken out on this incident a number of times and has released his own statement. But a lot of people, not just in Ferguson, are unhappy with the response that has happened so far. But what we do know is that there will be a federal investigation that will look into the actual incident of Michael Brown and all the incidents around his death, including whether or not the officer was just in his firing and ultimately his killing of Michael Brown and the incident. But again, there's so many facts that are still being uncovered by the national news and by investigators. But it's just a sad state of affairs for many people, particularly since this is not the first incident that we know of police brutality that has made national news, but also the ones that we haven't heard of that haven't made national news.
And those ones that have necessarily not been in the news but have happened within the last month, you have Ezell Ford, a 24-year-old that was killed unarmed, another unarmed 24-year-old that was killed by LAPD right here in Los Angeles. And because of this case, because we're giving so much national attention to this case, his name isn't even a household name like Mike Brown is. You also have the death of I forget exactly how old he was, but I want to say 22 years old in Ohio. Another unarmed black man, he was inside of a Walmart. This case was completely different because he was inside of a Walmart, had a toy gun that Walmart sold. He had it in his hands, and police shot and killed him. So I want to.
So I should mention, Jordan, before you move on, what's interesting about that case in particular is that Walmart incident happened in a state where people are allowed to carry. To have what is it called?
Conceal and carry. Conceal and carry. So you're allowed to carry. You're allowed to carry your armed weapons like out in the open.
Exactly.
Which is completely that's different from me being in a liberal state like California. But I want to get how I want to start this conversation. I want to start talking about a lot of Jamira struggled over it. I also struggled over it, and I want to kind of put that out there. How we never said like Darren Wilson, this cop, killed Mike Brown. That's a fact. So I want to start this conversation talking about police, and particularly black youth and black men encountering police. So this first one is geared toward Nate, but anyone else can definitely answer if you have these different personal experiences. But how have your encounters been with the police? Have they been positive? Take us through one. What have they? A lot of people don't understand because we're experts of our own experiences, so we want you to be an expert of that experience, but also tell that experience to other people that might not know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think young black men in police has been an issue for time. And the more we think that we're making positive changes or that we're coming to some solutions or we're having some understanding between young black men and officers, we come to find out that nothing has changed at all. Specifically, I've had multiple encounters with officers where I have been detained, I've been beat, and I've been profiled on multiple occasions. One incident being a graduate at USC hosting a party where officers came to shut the party down. I questioned officers on their reason to shut the party down. Now you have to understand that this party was predominantly students of color, blacks and Latinos. And the way that officers approached our house, it was automatically, you could tell that it was racial. The profiling is what is so devastating for our communities. In this incident, I was detained. 70 plus LAPD officers came to my house. Now you question, these are USC students. Whatever the case, there was no violence, nobody had been shot. But when you're talking about the presence of police, when they represent minorities, it's the patrolling and the excessiveness that make this fear between, blacks and police, specifically young black men. At this incident, another party was going on across the street, which predominantly white partygoers. They told them to stay in the house and be safe. So my whole issue with police is the whole model of protect and serve never applied to young black men at all. I had another recent incident while I was in San Jose, giving a commencement speech actually at the African American cultural celebration there. And again, there was an encounter with police, and I questioned police again, just wanting to communicate. In this specific incident, as questioning happened when I was concerned about my friend who was being patted down, being asked for marijuana, being, touched by multiple police officers, me and an officer got in an altercation when I said, hey, I'm a college graduate, I know my rights. He told me to back up. He put his hands around me, threw me on the ground, pulled out a baton, and started beating me excessively, which is a case that I'm dealing with specifically right now at this moment. So the personal experience that I have had with officers, no matter what, I try to be hopeful. I try to communicate. I try to understand, is there something that I did wrong? I don't try to victimize myself. I don't try to feel like all cops are against me. But again and again, we start to see results of what's happening around the world, specifically with this case of Michael Brown, what's happening with Eric Garner, what's happening, with the multiple incidents that have happening. There is an issue with officers and young black men, and that needs to be addressed and that needs to be discussed. And it's a problem, and there's fear. And that's why I think people are frustrated, and I think that's why people are upset, because we try to communicate, we try to understand, but there's no understanding. It's a real issue against young black men, and it's a problem.
I think you brought up a good point in terms of fear. I think it's fear on both sides, fear of the officers as well as fear of the young men that are in the situation. I'm from New York. I just happen to live in D.C., but, living in New York, everyone always sees the guys in blue as, our protectors, serve, et cetera, in certain situations, right? Before I moved to D.C., I was living in Crown Heights, and there's always a police presence. And where I lived, there was a large Hasidic Jewish population. And, for their gatherings or, their Friday evening religious ceremonies, they would block off the streets and those types of things. And it always seemed, very calm and just protecting and serving. And then when I've noticed a difference where the cops are called for incidents that include whether they're men or women of color, there always seems to be an underlying tone as they approach or as they deal with the situation. And so while my run-ins with the cops are really limited to getting pulled over for speeding, they always see, and what I have observed in my communities always seem really, you can see the difference and you can tell the difference. And to me, I think that given the history that not only our countries and our communities have experienced, I think that the cops go into those situations with a certain level of fear. And when people fear, it comes across as aggression. And for the young men that are involved, it's fear because the first thing you think is, I don't want to lose my life. And I saw a video maybe last month. There was a young man, and it didn't show what led up to the situation, but from what you could see from the video, the cop knocked on the door, and he was trying to question the young man who was sitting on his couch. And so the young man who was filming the video was saying, oh, this is just my friend, like, we live here, et cetera, et cetera. And the cop literally just bogarted his way into the house and, proceeded to put his hands on the young man. And you could see literally this young man went from, well, what's happening, what's going on, to literally fearing for his life. And I think when you get into that flight or fright moment, you do what you can to protect yourself. And so in that moment, the cop did as well. And so I think when we're in these situations, that everybody is fearful because nobody knows what's going to happen for whatever your respective experience is. And I think that it definitely requires a conversation. But more than anything, President Obama mentioned it today in his address, the deeper root cause, and for these law enforcement officers to understand the disparities within these communities, right? He said that if, Black men commit crimes, they should absolutely be prosecuted. But that doesn't apply to everybody. And when these officers go into these situations, they need to be aware of these disparities and be able to govern themselves accordingly. And I don't think that happens. I think they just all go in with one general blanket. He did it. I'm going to be aggressive, and this is how you deal with Black people.
And That's a really good point because it goes. So now we a lot of times what we saw with Ferguson over the last 8 days, we saw this like militarized police force, and everybody on Twitter has been like really crazy, because you get kind of so what is but you brought up a good point, Ebony, where you talked about on both sides there's fear. So how do you have that conversation with police where my question would be, as someone that is a black youth, like, why does my black skin scare you so much? But police are thinking that their lives are in fear. So and so what we've seen is this like whole, we could get into like the military and prison industrial complex. I was reading earlier from MSNBC. They said since 1996, that was when I was like 4 years old, by the way. 1996, the U.S. Defense Department transferred $4.3 billion in military equipment. They transferred this to local police across the nation. So now you have local police across the nation being able to use the SWAT gear, being able to use that riot gear, the camo. So when over the past few days, when we've seen the reaction to the citizens that are protesting on Ferguson, they're getting like cops in camouflage in front of Dollar Tree stores and gas stations, and it's starting to look like a war zone. Is that a good response? Is that a positive response? Does it get citizens, does it make them fear the police and think that, okay, we want to go inside and we don't feel this way anymore about you? Does that make them say F the police? So I'll take that over to Tyree. It's like militarized police force.
Oh, goodness gracious. I have a lot to say about that. I had tweeted out, I think about 2 days ago, I think that the Ferguson PD and everyone involved in the militarization of the occupation of Ferguson, I don't think they're really aware of the perception that they're leaving with black youth and how it's going to have such an indelible mark on generations to come. Like, I'm more intrigued in looking at the long-standing results of how Ferguson in these last 8 days is going to make an impact on them, because the level of distrust that black youth are having toward the authority figures is insurmountable. Like, I've never seen so much excessive force, like not even in Gaza from the pictures, or not even in Iraq, not in anything that I've ever seen anything this lethal done to U.S. citizens. And I think the dehumanization of black youth is the real question that needs to be discussed or needs to be talked about, because it's running rampant. And when you have snipers pointed at peaceful demonstrators, this is not okay. This is not okay. And I almost thought this was a joke too, because for them to pull out Humvees and them to bring out like these snipers and heavy duty armory, I'm like, wait, is this a military exercise, or are they bored, or did they want to just kind of like play with this? Is like, what is this? And for all sakes, I'm just really, really, really disturbed about how black youth are going to view this in Missouri and how their lives are not valued. Because I saw a kid got tear gassed. I saw a picture of a kid who got tear gassed yesterday. And what is he going to say when he goes to school this week or next week and says, teacher,
it's interesting.
The police shot at me.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Tyree, because what we wanted to do also is to talk about how over the last few days, not only have politicians come out and made statements about the Michael Brown incident, but you also had celebrities speak out. Everyone from T.I. to Nelly. You've had Jesse Williams from Grey's Anatomy, as well as David Banner. And I think one of the biggest points that I think David Banner made over the last 2 days is that he talked about how in particular, police officers don't see any value for young black men, because young black men also don't see any value for their own lives. And so, what is that conversation? How do we bring that back? How do we show people that there is value in black life, and that black bodies matter, and that there needs to be more of a comprehensive conversation on how we rebuild those communities, particularly communities of color?
Great question.
It sounds like you're trying to move this conversation to talk about what about black on black crime. Is that what
Let's not go there.
No, but that's something that's always the opposite. The conversation a lot of times get turned around when they say that when we talk about how the fact that the police is killing black men is that black men are also killing black men. We have to have a